What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and I am joined by one of the top fantasy football rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. And Sean, welcome back. We are going to get into some rankings. So happy ranking season. Happy best ball season. How you feeling?
Yeah, happy ranking season. Feeling good. Just, wrapped up my initial projections and rankings for the 2025 season. So that's always exciting. Always nice to get that first run out there. Then, of course, I'm going to spend the next few months tweaking them and diving into every player and overreacting to every bit of news like everyone else. But it feels good to at least start the process. How about you?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. It felt like, kind of like a weight off my shoulders once you kind of get all 32 teams initially projected. And then you kind of look at things and you're like, oh, wait, what the hell is going on here? And then now that process starts. But, feeling good about them so far. And we're going to dive right in. We're going to talk running backs and wide receivers here and kind of just go through in our initial ranks, who are guys that we're higher on, who are guys that we are lower on, and we'll kind of talk through them. So let's just start right off with running back. Who you got as somebody that's popping in your model, beyond what ADP is kind of ranking them at?
Yeah, so stop me if you've heard this before, but I'm once again high on David Montgomery. His ADP, I kind of looked at the ADP, recent ADP, like ever since the draft. So, there's probably not as big of a sample. These things are moving, but I saw his ADP is RB24. And of course, my rank is much, much higher as usual. I have him at RB17. So this is, the third straight year I've been banging the table for Monty as, a low end RB2 because, of course, he's going to split the backfield of Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the most talented backs in the league. And, he's technically, I guess, the backup. But he gets enough work where, especially goal line touches, where he's going to be able to hold steady RB2 value even when Gibbs is healthy. But if Gibbs ever misses time, I mean, he's going to be a top 5 running back in my weekly projection. So he has that baked in ceiling to go with, a pretty high floor for being considered a backup. So last year, Jahmyr Gibbs played every single game. He was healthy all season. So Monty didn't really have a chance to, hit his ceiling. And Monty himself missed, 3 games. So that was kind of Monty's floor was last year. So I think the market is just once again kind of underestimating his high floor, high ceiling combo at RB24. So sort of factoring in that Gibbs, like all running backs, would be likely to miss 2 to 3 games. I have Monty much, much higher at RB17.
Yeah, I have him, I think, right around RB20, so I am higher than consensus as well. Interestingly enough, though, probably the first year in a few that there's a little bit of, I guess, uncertainty just because you have no Ben Johnson. So you have John Morton coming over as the coordinator. He was on the Lions staff in 22, but then he was on the Broncos staff the last couple years. So I would think they would just kind of keep, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But just thought I'd point that out because this is also the time of year when you got to start thinking about all these different offensive coordinator changes and whatnot. So, but yeah, I'm higher on Monty as well. Who else you got?
And once again, Zach Charbonnet, basically my Monty of the NFC West. This is my third straight offseason where I'm pegging him as a sleeper pick in that RB, 36 range. Outside of where, you're going to have starting running backs. So we're kind of going for high upside backups anyway. And I consider Charbonnet one of, if not one of the best backup running back in the league. So I'm not drafting him, for standalone value as long as Kenneth Walker's healthy. But the ceiling is obviously there when Walker misses time. Walker missed two-game stretches last year. And Charbonnet was the RB7 in the first 2-game stretch. He was the starting running back, and then he was RB2 weeks 14 and 15. So that, he has league winning upside if Walker were to miss significant time. And I know I saw some people saying that, Damian Martinez getting drafted in the 7th round was some, indictment against Charbonnet. I don't think that's the case at all. Charbonnet, this is going to be his third season. He was a second round running back. If anything, I've been seeing some noise that, Kenneth Walker is, trade candidate. I'm not factoring that in at all in my projections, and I'm still getting Charbonnet as, my RB30. But I mean, this time of year when you're drafting, best ball teams, especially those tournament style drafts, I mean, if Kenneth Walker were traded and Charbonnet becomes the starting running back for the Seahawks, you're going to be getting even more value drafting him this time of year. So just another sneaky angle why I think, Charbonnet in that RB36 range, considering his RB1 ceiling, I think he's another must pick in that range right now.
People really need to look at the history of 7th round picks, and especially in year one. And listen, they once in a while you see a guy pop, but I feel like it's just for content. Like everyone has to react to every single decision, and it's that's kind of the popular thing. Oh, this guy, like, if anything, it's the third offensive coordinator since Charbonnet got drafted. They're probably looking, if they're looking for an upgrade on anybody, it's Kenny McIntosh, and I thought McIntosh actually looked good at the end of last year. So
but
Raymond,
remember this time of year, every rookie is the next Bucky Irving, the next Adrian Peterson. Every rookie is perfect and good.
Everyone
is drafted way too high right now.
Dude, I wrote up that like the minute the draft, I think it was this day 2 happened, I was like, oh, the Broncos drafted Harvey instead of Hampton. I think he was going like in the 40s. He's RB18 now. Like there's just like you can't, like, it's tough. So I'm gonna actually talk about a guy who is still kind of high. A couple of guys actually rookies, but I want to start with a veteran because I gotta mention this guy because I feel like every year we try to just write him off, and every year he just keeps producing, and he's getting better. James Conner, he's going as the RB23. He's my RB20. His best 2 seasons arguably have been in Drew Petzing's scheme. He's the RB11 last year, the RB17 in just 13 games the year before. His best 2 yards after contact, which is very sticky, seasons have been the last 2 years, 3.3 and 3.9. And in his career, he's never finished lower than RB33, despite missing 23 games over his 7-year career. So I know he's on the older side, but as the year progressed, you thought maybe Benson was going to get more work, and Connor actually got more work in the passing game, and it seemed they continued to trust him. So, and he ended up playing 16 games. Who would have thought? So, you know what I mean? I think there is obviously a good chance that he probably misses his usual 2 to 4 games, but the floor is still really high, and the Cardinals have shown no indication that they're really trying to change anything up in that backfield beyond maybe switching up a little bit of Benson, Carter, DeMarcado. So I have Connor actually getting another about 5 to 7% decrease in his workload just because he's aging and whatnot. And he's still popping as a top 20 guy in my model. And he's just had a really high floor. Again, never finished as anything below a mid-range RB3. So he's been drafted as mid-range RB2. I'll take that all day.
He's like a Benjamin Button. I know he's getting older, but like you said, it was the first season he's played 16 or more games. If you look, his yards have gone up 6 straight seasons. So he's getting better with age. He's like a fine wine.
It kind of reminds me of Frank Gore a little bit. Like he just
that's a good
he doesn't need this like he just has like the right blend of power and elusiveness. Like, so as he gets older, it doesn't seem like he's just like, he doesn't strike me as one of those guys that's going to fall straight off a cliff. I mean, he could if he, gets hurt in week 3 and misses the season, but the efficiency's been putting up. The Cardinals are, stable scheme. They didn't really add anybody skill wise. So it's kind of running it back there. O-line could be better. So yeah, like the spot for Connor. But a couple of rookies I like, and running back gets kind of weird quick. It's a kind of a mix of almost overhyped rookies, I guess you could say, and then just backfields where we really don't know what the hell is going on. So if you get out of the top 36, I think you have to just take shots at these unsettled backfields. So I know there's a guy you like, and you mentioned back, I think in what was it, maybe April, even March, but well, not had to be April, I guess, after the Cowboys drafted him. But
Right.
Jaden Blue,
Yeah,
Jaden Blue, he's my RB40, and that's just because this is one of the unsettled backfields where, first of all, everybody's cheap, but Javonte Williams, yes, he's only 25, but just 3.6 yards per carry on 356 carries over the past 2 seasons, and just 5.7 yards per catch since his rookie year on 115 catches. So he's doing nothing efficiently. He's like Ezekiel Elliott, but 10 years younger. And then Miles Sanders, he's 28, so that's on the other side of the running back peak now, 27 for them. And unlike a guy like Connor, he has not been getting better with age, just 3.5 yards per carry on his last 184 over the last 2 years, and just 5.4 yards per catch over his last 3 seasons. So you're talking about two of the most inefficient backs in the league that the Cowboys have on their roster ahead of Blue. And, and this is after Ezekiel Elliott, and we saw how that ended last year. So now you don't have Dowdle on the roster, but Blue, another guy, you can play him on pass downs. He has some pass catching ability. He has some elusiveness, but I think he's just big enough, that he's listed around 200 pounds. So I think he's just big enough to where if he wins that job, I think he would get that kind of increasing Dowdle type workload from last season down the stretch. So willing to take a shot on Blue out of Texas, who really, I think he only had like one good year, but if you look at Rico Dowdle's production, for instance, back in college, he didn't really wow you either. But the fact that the Cowboys, this is their backfield situation right now, I think this is just, you could be getting an RB2. You could be getting Dowdle type production sooner than later from this guy.
Yeah, Blue. Just real quick, because I love this. If there's anybody that could be this year's Bucky Irving, it's Blue. He's exact same height, weight as Bucky Irving, and I wrote down, I don't know if Blue can handle a full workload. I said that about Bucky last year as well. So just kind of like a wide open depth chart, a ton of talent. He's just in a good spot. So yeah, love him. And the production at Texas, you got to consider he was backing up Bijan Robinson, one of the best running back talents we've seen this decade. And then Jonathan Brooks, who he's been injured his entire NFL career last year, but he was solid as well. So last year was, Blue's first time to be the lead back. And I think he dealt with an ankle injury all season. So there's excuses to be made about his lack of production, but when he was out there, he was very solid. And yeah, this is just a smash spot, I think, and anything outside of the top 40, he is definitely worth a flyer.
So you said Blue's probably the most likely Bucky Irving. I think there's one other guy that might give him a run for his money. Basil Tootin out of Virginia Tech. It's hard not to fall in love with him just on paper, and he pops on film. He ran the 4.32. I don't think he's quite that fast, with pads on or whatnot. But you have to note that this is a new Jaguars regime with Liam Cohen, who, remember, they got the GM fired. They wanted to keep the old GM, and he was like, nah, buddy. So they fired the GM. They make the deal for Hunter. They give up a second and a fourth, and they still take Tootin with pick number 104 overall. And that's with Bigsby, with ETN already on the roster. So if you look at, Liam Cohen last year, 4th round pick, Bucky Irving, gave him those 207 carries and, en route to a RB2 finish. So I think that's not out of the realm of possibility for Tootin. If you look back over the past 5 years, among 4th round picks, 63% have finished as a top 2 in their backfield and carries. So I don't think that is out of the question. And just given the fact that we see this, they're trying to make a splash and go and get their guys. So it's not like this is not the regime that drafted ETN or the regime that drafted Tank Bigsby. So I've been hearing a lot just that the Jags really made ETN expendable. I'll talk about him in a second. And, we're going to get into some guys we're low on. But either way, I think this guy just has, he has the speed at 432. He has a 98th percentile speed score, 97th percentile burst. He's 80th percentile or better in his college metrics, yards per carry, target share, dominator rating. So I think that this guy, he could end up having like one of those Tank Bigsby rookie years where it just, never comes together. But it's also possible he wins the job outright in camp, just given that there's no allegiance to any of these other guys. And those guys really, no one ran away with the job either. So like Tootin a lot. He's already going his RB 39. Wish the cat wasn't as much out of the bag. But like I said, this is kind of this is setting up to be a big frozen pond this year. So, I mean, that's why I had to shout out Connor. You had to shout out Montgomery, because it's like, man, there's you think those guys are shaky. I mean, whew. So, yeah, I think you got to take your shots outside the top 36 and just aim for the fences. And I think Tootin, along with Blue, two of those guys who could end up leading their backfields. All right. Who are you low on at running back?
Yeah, so both of my running backs I'm low on are kind of like, draft fallout backs. Guys, their stock took a huge hit. But I'm looking at the ADP ever since the draft, and I'm still, quite a bit lower. So I think the market still hasn't really baked in enough, how much their stock hit. But the first one's Najee Harris of the Chargers. His ADP since the draft is still top 30. It's RB 28. Mine is RB 32. But again, I just think he has a lower floor than the market realizes. And, his value will probably decrease as the season goes on, because, it looked like he was going to be the lead back in LA after, signing with the Chargers before the draft. Potentially was going to just step into the J.K. Dobbins role, a role where he could succeed. Najee's a true workhorse back. He's never missed a game in 4 seasons in the NFL, which is crazy. So he's, an Iron Man, so to speak, at the position. But, he just hasn't been as efficient the past couple seasons. So the fact that the Chargers added, a first-round talent in Omarion Hampton, just spells trouble for Najee. I don't think he'd be able to put up value, in a 50-50 committee, but I wouldn't be shocked if Hampton, leapfrogs him immediately, or at least, a few weeks into the season. So it's going to be really tough for Najee to put up top 30 value, in my opinion. If you think about it, back in the Steelers days, Jalen Warren was always a threat to overtake him. And Warren was, he's a solid back, but he was an undrafted free agent, whereas Hampton is a legit, first round talent. So I just don't see how people are still drafting Najee in the top 30, considering the Chargers did just add Hampton. Even though this is a good situation, both backs might be able to offer value, on a weekly basis. But, I just in this range, I'd rather be taking flyers on guys with more upside than Najee.
Remember Kamani Vidal?
Oh, yeah. He made that 50-yard catch touchdown, his first snap.
Yeah,
right?
And then he got outplayed by Hassan Haskins. Yep. Yeah.
Wait, man. Are you comparing him to Hampton or Najee?
No, I'm just like that was like a popular dart throw. I had some shares. I'm not gonna lie, but it's just funny how quickly things go south for guys like that. But yeah, I agree. I think more than likely what's going to end up happening is, or at least ideally for them, is Hampton would get what's essentially the Dobbins role, and then Harris would get what's essentially the Gus Edwards role, right? Yeah. So it wouldn't be nothing, but it would be like 8 to 12 touches, and probably mostly on the ground. And given how talented Hampton is, I can't imagine that they'll make it a point to take him off the field and goal line. He's probably the better pass catching back. So it's going to be tough, like you said, but maybe Najee will drop a little. I could see, I wouldn't be surprised if, you're not the only person kind of saying, hey, let's go down on Najee, and maybe he'll drop too far. Like if he drops out of the top 40, I think I'd be interested, especially.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I have him at RB 34, so I'm even a couple spots lower than you, but totally agree. I think it's like the Gus Edwards role. And who else? I know you got one more.
Yeah, similar, situation, but it's Ramondre Stevenson who took, a massive blow when the Patriots drafted Travion Henderson in round 2. He's, a home run threat kind of guy, but he could be a 3-down back, and, real lead back potential. I know you've hinted at the Patriots offense could kind of revolve around Travion Henderson. He's a legit back. So, and again, similar to what you were saying with Tootin, this is a new regime. Mike Vrabel's coming in. They drafted Travion Henderson, so he's kind of their guy. So even though Stevenson did sign that 4-year deal, this is the second year. I don't think Vrabel really cares about that. He's just going to play whoever's, the best back. And they probably think that's Travion Henderson probably right away. So, Stevenson, he could, kind of like what you said, if his ADP drops outside of the top 40, he could be sort of a high upside backup, but I just don't see it. They still have Antonio Gibson, who at times last year was a threat to overtake Stevenson's lead role because, Ramondre was having some serious fumbling issues. So he's got a lot going against him, but more importantly, Travion Henderson is another legit back. This is a phenomenal running back class. So Henderson's right up there with one of the top backs in this class, and Stevenson, I just don't think he's going to be able to hold him off. So he's still being drafted inside the top 40. So my rank is, 4 to 5 slots lower, but one of those guys where I just don't think he has a high enough floor ceiling combo to really be taking in this range. Again, I'm all in on a guy like Zach Charbonnet. He is somebody that we know has RB1 upside if the starting running back were to miss time. So Stevens is one of those guys that, the market's definitely souring on, but probably not enough, I think, after, the Patriots did take Travion Henderson in the second round.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, too, because technically it's not a new regime because Josh McDaniels was there when they drafted Stevenson in 2021, but Stevenson is kind of just, like, I think he would get those, like, like if he was the RB2, I think he would kind of like remember those monster James White years. Like I think Stevenson would be like the other, like the who was it? Was it Deion Lewis or something? I forget who it was, but like he'll get like just these like non-valuable carries. Like I think his passing down usage is bound to go down, which is not ideal. And so is he going to be able to live on, goal line or something like that? Who knows? And that's even because Gibson came on strong and actually outplayed Stevenson down the stretch last year too. So, and Stevenson is, he's getting a little bit older now too. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is definitely not like McDaniels wasn't there when they gave him the extension, right? He wasn't. So like, it's hard to know how they feel about him at this point, but he is 27, which is the kind of like that's tends where you kind of go downhill. So yeah, I think there's the writing's on the wall for him, and 4 yards per carry or under each of the last couple years as well. So yeah, not too. I got him at RB 52. So yeah, I'm not very high on him at all.
Were you thinking the Kevin Falk role?
No, just like the running back who doesn't get like he's not like the primary anything. He's just kind of like there. It was kind of like Deion Lewis, I think, is the guy I'm thinking of. Like you would get like 8, 9, 10 carries a game, but not necessarily goal line, not necessarily third down. Just kind of there. Not Garrett Blount,
league winner.
Not James White. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Couple guys. I am low on a running back. Oh, man, I feel like I've been saying this since the playoffs week in, week out on this podcast, but got to run it back. Isaiah Pacheco. He's going as the RB 33 on Underdog. I got him as the RB 42. I don't think we could just assume that he's going back to Isaiah Pacheco, and I don't think we know what's going to happen in this backfield because they brought back Kareem Hunt. They got Elijah Mitchell, who, I mean, when he's healthy, he's good. I don't know if he can ever stay healthy, but you also drafted 7th rounder Brashard Smith, who had over 1,600 scrimmage yards, 18 touchdowns last year at SMU. So a little bit more crowded backfield. The yards per touch for Pacheco, 5.2, 4.7, 4.1 the last 3 years. He was a late round pick, so it's not like, he could just be kind of regressing to his mean. And remember how it was with Edwards-Helaire, where it was he started off all right and then just kind of went down, and we always thought he would get back. And every year, like he would be kind of ranked as if he was the Chiefs starting back, and it just never really got back to that point. That could be what's happening with Pacheco, because I mean he did play 10 games last year, and barely averaged under 10 touches per game, 10 carries per game, excuse me, and just never got it going. Maybe the O-line is better, but he hasn't really been an asset in the past game. So I think it's a really dangerous pick at that spot where you could wait a little longer and just kind of swing for the fences on a guy whose arrow is pointing up instead of a guy whose arrow is pointing down. Because this is going to be a 26-year-old 7th round pick. So he might have peaked already. Not loving that one in the top 30. And then same thing, Travis Etienne. I mean, I'm high on Tootin. I thought Bigsby outplayed Etienne last year as well. So I don't like Etienne at RB37. I know people are kind of saying, well, look at his upside years. He could get back to that, and he could even still be number 1 in the depth chart as we speak. But I think it's a bad sign they drafted Tootin with a top 105 pick. Etienne's another guy. Just the efficiency's been decreasing. 5.7 yards a touch rookie year, 4.6 year 2, 4.3 year 3, and now he's 26. And remember, he missed his rookie year with that serious lower body injury. So, and then he averaged 290 touches per year his first 2 years that he actually played. So he's another guy, probably just peaked already. Definitely want to sell on a guy whose arrow I think is pointing down, and might end up in a different spot, but I don't know if that's necessarily any better for his value either. So Etienne and Pacheco for me.
Yeah, Pacheco's kind of tricky. I do agree with you. I think he's kind of overrated, but I mean, he came back from a significant injury last year, looked like shit. I remember you would always take his under, and it's like the Chiefs, they try to get him going early in the game, and he just didn't have that pop. So then they turned to Kareem Hunt. So, I mean, that was not good. But, we kind of had that happen with like Cam Akers a few years ago where, he came back from a significant injury, looked horrible. And then the next season he was decent. So, there is some hope. Maybe Pacheco pops next year. But like you said, he's a 7th round talent. They have a ton of different backs on the depth chart. They brought in Elijah Mitchell. So it's just going to be really tough for him to overcome that. But I'm just curious to see if he has a little bit more juice with the offseason to kind of get healthy and get that leg back, because he did, he returned from a pretty significant in-season injury.
Cam Akers gave us 6 weeks in like 5 in a 5 year.
He was
career.
Like the RB1.
Yeah, no,
6 weeks, but he was like the back.
I mean, it was like 6 weeks when he was like an RB1. Yeah. His career high is 786 yards of rushing and 7 touchdowns, and that was in that year. And he got it most of it in that 6 week stretch. I just feel like and the thing about Akers was he was a 2nd round pick. Pacheco, they were never banking on him in the first place, and I just they let Edwards-Helaire fade out, and he was a 1st round pick. So again, Andy Reid backfields, you can't trust him.
Exactly.
Can't trust him. That's it's like every week it was, how low can we go on Pacheco? It was like the prop goes from carry prop is like 12.5, he gets like 11. It's like 9.5, he gets 8. He gets 7.5, he gets 6. I can't buy in on this guy, especially not as a top 35 guy. Again, I just rather swing for guys whose arrows pointed upward. But we go up and on to wide receiver. Sean Kerner, give me a couple wide receivers you're high on.
Yeah, the first one's Darnell Mooney, being drafted wide receiver 50 right now. And he was, quietly good last year. He finishes the wide receiver 28. And I was shocked just how consistent he was. He was always kind of like a deeper threat, not really a high volume kind of guy, but last year he had 7 games with 5 or more receptions. And he still had, spike week upside, which is what we want in best ball, obviously. And he had 14 catches on throws 20 plus yards downfield, which was the 2nd most in the league. And then, now we're going to go from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix Jr. It remains to be seen if that's going to be an upgrade. I think it probably will be. But Penix Jr. was considered the best, deep ball passer in last year's very good quarterback class. So I think that's going to help Mooney, especially if he continues to see a ton of downfield throws. So I think the combination of just a higher floor than we're used to seeing with Mooney and that spike week potential makes him a very, very solid bet in that wide receiver 50 range. I have him around wide receiver 45. But again, I think just that combo is really, really good in best ball specifically.
Yeah, he's one of those guys too. He's just very solid, always on the field. I think his lowest average route rate in a season is 78% his rookie year. His last 4 years,
Wow.
he's been 84% or higher per game. So, yeah, he's a guy that he's gonna stay on the field. And last year, with that scheme where they a lot of 1-1 personnel, he was on the field 94% per game of the route, so of the dropback. So yeah, like him as well. I think he kind of faded out from that. He was like a sweeper when he first came into the league, and then I think he had like a bad season in the middle there with Justin Fields, and people just kind of forgot about him. But now he's a post hype guy, and he's still, relatively, he's pretty much in his prime at this point. So yeah, I like Mooney as well. Who else you like?
Yeah, so this guy is best ball specific. Wouldn't touch him in redraft leagues, but it's Keon Coleman, who's going wide receiver 58 in best ball. I have him inside my top 50 at wide receiver 49. But if you remember, this time last year, trying to project the Bills wide receiver room was very tricky, especially Coleman, who was kind of a raw rookie. We didn't really know how they were going to distribute targets with, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis gone. And Khalil Shakir definitely turned into like the volume guy, the Diggs role. So he's an excellent play this year as well. But Coleman kind of became the Gabe Davis role. More just the downfield threat. He's going to have a very low weekly floor. You never know when he's going to go off. But they moved on from Amari Cooper, Matt Collins, who tended they soaked up some of those deep targets. They brought in Josh Palmer, who I think could be sneaky as well. He's going to certainly see some downfield targets, but I just think Coleman's going to have an even bigger of the downfield pie, so to speak. So I think he's going to be a very, very kind of streaky kind of guy, which is perfect for best ball because you don't need to figure out when he's going to go for 2 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. Those will just, you'll get those when they come. So I think Coleman is a specific best ball guy according to my model. So I'm 10, 12 slots higher than ADP right now in best ball specifically for him.
Yeah, to your point on Davis, in Davis's rookie year, he had 35 for 599. Coleman had 29 for 556. So kind of
nice,
similar production. And yeah, I like that they got rid of some of those bigger bodied like downfield guys like Hollins and even Cooper. Now it seems like they just got a bunch of gadget guys, like they signed Elijah Moore,
yeah.
And so him and Samuel probably compete for work. But yeah, I think Coleman, he was getting a ton of routes, especially before Cooper got signed. So yeah, he could be sneakily on the field for like 95%, just like Gabe Davis ended up being. Speaking of which, I'm actually high on a Bills receiver as well. I know it's best ball, and sometimes you try to stay away from some of the slot receiver types, but I think Khalil Shakir at wide receiver 45 is way too low. He's still my wide receiver 30, and remember this Bills team, they do want to spread it around, but you got to kind of follow the money. After they got rid of Diggs, now they just signed Shakir to a 4-year, $60 million extension, $30 million guaranteed. If you look at the playoffs and you exclude week 18, where I think he was technically active but didn't really play because they didn't need to do anything against the Patriots. 18 games Shakir played. He had 5 or more receptions in 12 of them. He had 6 or more receptions in 10 of them, or 56%, which is very good. And his target per route rate was just a hair under 26%, which is, very, very, very good, almost borderline elite. And his first 8 games, 72% of the pass snaps, last 10, 81%. So he even saw an uptick in usage. And the fact that they signed him to that extension, that kind of says, okay, this is going to be our guy. And I think, they're trying to lock him in, get a good value for a guy I think they're going to use pretty heavily. And, anytime, if he was going maybe wide receiver 25, it would be different. But at 45, I mean, you're just looking for guys who are going to lead their team in targets. You could end up getting like like you said, a mini Diggs type of a season, if not just the full Diggs type of season from Shakir. So I think he's getting criminally undervalued given his quarterback, given that wide open receiving depth chart. All right. What about guys you're low on at wide receiver?
Yeah, I'd hate to do this, but Garrett Wilson, I'm just a bit lower on, at least to start. His ADP is wide receiver 15. My initial rank is wide receiver 20. It's still bunched up there, like one slight tweak, and a guy can go up or down 5 slots. But, I still consider Wilson one of the top receivers in the league, no question. But I'm just a bit lower because they are expected to, start Justin Fields week 1. I think he'll pretty much start all the games that he's healthy. So I just have a pretty big drop in terms of pass volume. Fields is going to scramble more than obviously Aaron Rodgers did last year. And Wilson is clearly the alpha target in this offense. There's really no wide receiver 2. I think Mason Taylor is sneaky as a dart throw as a tight end later on, but I'm worried that defenses will just be able to kind of double team him, put extra resources on him because there really is no one else to throw to. So, I think he's going to have, very high floor on a weekly basis, but I think just with Fields there, it's going to be tougher for him to put up top 12 weeks, consistently. So I'm just a little bit lower on him to start. I have him at wide receiver 20 to open up.
Yeah, he's a really tough projection too, because then he also, last year it was like Devontae Adams came, but he had Aaron Rodgers, and now Adams is gone, and who's a target hog, but Rodgers is also gone, and Fields is there, and they seem committed to him. So, and then all this chatter about Breece Hall might be getting a dip in usage. So yeah, I mean he's going to get a lot of targets, but yeah, I don't know what to do with him either. I think I have him wide receiver 17, so just a tad higher than you. But I kind of splitting the difference between ADP and where you're at, which actually I feel good about that. But so I'll roll with that for now. But I totally agree. I think he's a really tough projection, and the floor is probably lower than the ceiling is high. Who else are you low on at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, another guy that I kind of like, but I'm a bit lower on to start. It's Rome Odunze. Wide receiver 30 is where he's being drafted ever since the draft. I'm ranking him a little bit lower, wide receiver 35. I think, he struggled his rookie season. I think a lot of that just had to do with bad luck on deep throws. As he and Caleb Williams just were not connecting on deep throws, which is kind of weird because Caleb Williams is a good deep ball passer. Rome Odunze is an excellent all-around wide receiver. So I think they'll clean that up a bit. But it's just really tricky to project this offense right now. It should be a lot better this year, obviously, under Ben Johnson. Keenan Allen's gone, so that's freeing up a ton of targets. But they did, they drafted Colson Loveland, who I think is really talented tight end, and Luther Burden at wide receiver. So, I don't think it's a lock that Odunze is going to out-target or out-snap Burden. I think it's likely, but still there's some downside there. So I think whenever you're drafting a receiver, in the top 30, which Odunze is there, I kind of want a higher floor to go with the ceiling. And I just think Odunze's floor is a little bit lower than the market realizes right now, where, of course, he could have, a year or two breakout, be a top 20 receiver. But there is a scenario here where, he just doesn't have it. Burden steps up. Loveland steps up. They still have DJ Moore. And he could end up, finishing outside of the top 40. So I just think there's other guys in this range. I just like their floor ceiling combo a bit more than Odunze. Now, certainly I'm going to have some Odunze shares, but I just think based on his ADP at wide receiver 30, I'm just a little bit lower than consensus, at least to start.
Yeah, my medium projection for Odunze is in the mid 40s. I do bump him up a little for best ball because he's that kind of guy, deep ball guy, year 2, a lot of has that first round pedigree. So there is a high ceiling. You do want that in best ball, but I agree. There's also a very realistic range of outcomes where he could be the number 4 target, the number 3 target, just not necessarily a true difference maker. And he's being drafted well above what his production was last year. And you're right. I think Burden could kind of slot into that Keenan Allen role. And if he doesn't, it's a combination of Loveland and Burden could surely do it, because remember, Commit didn't do anything last year. So, just having a tight end that, could put up Laporta type numbers right off the bat is it's a bit concerning, I think, for Odunze. And Moore is the guy who pops a lot more. He still ranks, as a top 20 guy for me. He kind of gets those high percentage targets, and he gets a couple rush attempts. He just has enough there where I think he can weather the storm of these new additions a little bit better than a Dunze, who's going to be boom bust, which it does make sense for best ball, but still, I agree with you. He's being overdrafted, I think, because he's kind of that prototypical best ball guy. The guy I'm low on right now that sticks out is Ricky Pearsall. So he's being drafted as a wide receiver 41. I have him as a wide receiver 55. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty with the 49ers receiving core. Juwan Jennings came on really strong last year, so he's going to be a factor. So he's right around wide receiver 36 for me, which is right around consensus. We don't know exactly when Ayuk is going to be back, which I think is big. You also signed Robinson, who, he does nothing but produce or at least hog snaps or whatever. He's kind of like a Mac Hollins type, where he's always going to play more snaps than you think he is. And Pearsall, if you look at the 28 first round receivers over the last 5 years in terms of their target per route rate, his was 14.4% in year one. That is 26th of 28, so bottom three. He had a 5-week stretch last year, weeks 11 through 15, where he caught 2 passes on 107 routes. So like that is not, I don't want those kind of cold stretches. I know he had the big game to close the season against the Detroit Lions, but I mean, come on, let's be real. I think the Niners are already pretty much out of it by then. Everyone had a big game in that game. Yeah. And I think that recency bias might be affecting things a little much. Now, I will say this, like, I think Ayuk might also be overvalued as well, but I just don't, I don't want to buy a guy like Pearsall, who was kind of a surprise first round pick to begin with. It was a little bit of a surprise he went that early. Didn't really produce as much as you'd want. I know he had the unfortunate shooting and whatnot, so he could be better physically this year. But you're still talking about McCaffrey likely back. You still got Kittle there. Ayuk's going to be back at some point. Jennings came on and might still be ascending. Robinson is there. Like, there's just a lot going on in this pass catcher court for Pearsall to kind of be the guy who we're throwing a top 41 pick at. So I am low on him. He's in the 50s for me.
Yeah, you said Ayuk might be a little bit overrated right now. He's probably not going to be ready week one. How many games are you projecting for Ayuk? Because in theory, Pearsall's value would come early in the season. And, in best ball, those aren't really the valuable weeks, because that's when every team's playing. There's no bye weeks. So if his value's kind of front loaded, that's not good for best ball either. But how many games do you think Ayuk's going to miss to start the season?
So it sounds more likely than not that he is going to start the year on like PUP, and you know how I feel about guys like that.
Oh yeah,
because you know what it is. It's like then you still got to get back to full strength, and this is no longer like Ayuk is the standout. I mean, Jennings was so good last year, and I mean, if people think Pearsall's good, I mean that's another issue. But I just think it's too crowded, especially if McCaffrey stays healthy. You can't forget that he's essentially another wide receiver in terms of the targets that he demands. So, I'm not really loving the value for any 49er receiver, to be honest. I think Jennings probably is just the fewest question marks at this point, but also that Robinson signing and then they drafted, they drafted a couple guys. So, I didn't see enough from Pearsall to where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's going to make the jump in year two. Maybe it was the shooting and whatnot, but I mean, again, he wasn't really thought of as the pedigree at which he was drafted at to begin with. So might be another semi whiff for the Niners. Time will tell, but I am much lower on him. Anyone else? Let's see. No, that's about it. Anything else to mention before we get out of here?
No, just gonna keep diving into these, keep tweaking my rank. So who knows? Maybe by the time we get to like midsummer, I'm higher on Garrett Wilson. Who knows? But at least initially, I think these are all players that I'm pretty sure my process is sound here, and these are guys I'll probably be attacking or fading, but we'll see over the coming weeks.
All right, so there you have it. Those were our initial running back and wide receiver rankings in terms of guys we're high and low on. You can find all of our rankings on fantasylabs.com. We're at those same handles on X as well. Until next time, let's get this money.